Locked is directed by David Yorovesky and stars Bill Skarsgård and Anthony Hopkins. And in this story, it deals where Bill Skarsgård is kind of down on his luck, trying to do best for his daughter, trying to pick her up from school, and he's struggling financially, and he tries to get the money to get his car fixed, and he kind of gets into some petty stuff where he's trying to, sell stuff, and one day he ends up coming across this electric vehicle that's armored, that's this SUV type vehicle like you see in the trailer, where he ends up getting locked inside of it after he tries to steal it. And he gets this phone call that's in there that's by Anthony Hopkins. And it's pretty straightforward from there, and pretty much that he has to do what Anthony Hopkins tells him, and not and pretty much it goes into like a spiel where Anthony Hopkins is keeping him like a prisoner, so to speak, and having him drive around and automatically in different areas and stuff, and basically, kind of torture him in some ways. And pretty much it's up to Bill Skarsgård to try to escape after, he gets himself trapped in there. And the more that he's learned that he is trying to, go play, that he's having battle of wits going on with Anthony Hopkins, who's talking to him on the phone, that the car is pretty much controlled by different things, whether it's heat, air, loud noises and stuff, that's pretty much having him suffer, and he's trying to get out. Now here's a little backstory. Now going into the trailers for this, I was actually really excited for it, because just coming from that kind of vibe of having Anthony Hopkins playing a villain again, where he's kind of basically doing a cross between his character of Hannibal Lecter and then also doing some elements of like Jigsaw and stuff. It had me really interested where it was going, and it's great seeing Bill Skarsgård having having a good run, where last year he had two really good movies I really enjoyed. One of them being one of my top favorite of the year, Nosferatu, and the other one, it didn't make my list, but I still really enjoyed Boy Kills World. And he had the really not so good The Crow film, and I don't really blame him for that. That was really a movie that really, was really, had a mess from a lot of other, from so much with it. But the guy has just been on a really good roll of doing a lot of great films that I really enjoy. And going into this, it shows a lot of the range that he has, where he's now playing a father. And, just this kind of vibe of him being secluded and everything, it was giving me vibes of Phone Booth or movies like that, where you have one character trapped in one location and they're trying to find their way out and stuff. And I really enjoy when it gives you that very kind of claustrophobic type of feel of it. And going into it, I was already pretty excited where it was taking itself. And I liked that the movie was keeping itself very simple in that regard. And so after upon seeing it, I can say that this was definitely a blast. This is one of the biggest surprises for me of the year, and it's everything that I really wanted it to be. It's got a couple things that are kind of really questionable in parts, and but other than that, it just really kept me on the edge, and I had such a blast with it. And so, to get my pros out of the way, I thought the cast in this were great. Bill Skarsgård, like I say, he really carries it from not only the struggles that he goes through in this, where he's having to try to escape from the car, and then also the emotional integrity that he puts into, especially how he's trying to basically, give up his like guilt and stuff. And in a way, it's coming across like his character's similar from Colin Farrell from Phone Booth in some ways, but in a good way, and that kind of where it's like a test of morality of him, of trying to basically do better and stuff. And you could say that for about the first half of that, it does take into effect with Anthony Hopkins' character, where he is kind of basically doing like this sort of thing that's sort of like a vigilante type approach that he goes with, because he's essentially keeping him in there because he's getting back at criminals, as he's fed up with the way that the society is and everything in real life. And it does go for like a kind of a Death Wish type of vibe, or those movies that deal with like trying to be a vigilante, so to speak. So in a way, for about a while, it kind of becomes where Anthony Hopkins is really more of an anti-hero for the most part. But I'm not going to spoil anything, but it kind of goes pretty much in a direction that you kind of expect at that point. But I got to really hand it to both actors. Like, they carry their own, especially where most of the film takes place at the car, and you're dealing with a lot of the banter back and forth between Anthony Hopkins' voice and Bill Skarsgård, just, really fearing for his life and everything, and a lot of the struggles. And as the way the camera work is also done too is very well shot, especially with how it's about mostly taking place inside the car, and a lot of the different camera angles that we get into, and the way that they do the elapsed time, how it goes by days and stuff, was really effective. And this movie doesn't hold back on a lot of the brutal stuff that we get to see, especially with some pretty gruesome stuff that you see later on in the film, of how much like this car is pretty much modified in a way. And I know they're probably going to do something like this in the future, because there's been talks of it, but honestly, I could pretty much do less of a remake of Christine in the future when this is pretty much the closest we could do in a good way. I love the original Christine, and I think that this is like the closest we kind of have on that regard. Or if you're not going to, or even Maximum Overdrive in that regard, with how the car is pretty much a character of its own, you know, and it works to its advantage because of all the little gizmos that it has, with how it's able to, you know, have like these high-end, like bulletproof glass and things like that, and a lot of the ways that, you know, it's really hard to like really try to get out to find out all the maneuvers and stuff. Like, there's just so much that you can really do inside here that technology has come a long way. Now, as the movie also goes along too, it was giving me a lot of intensity because as it pushes more of the stakes, it keeps itself to where it's not trying to go overboard and make things too complicated, which I appreciated. And the way that it also comes where Anthony Hopkins becomes this kind of unhinged type of character as well, I really enjoy that because it also makes me. It has a good double feature with something like Unhinged with Russell Crowe on that kind of level in a good way as well. And you could tell that that Anthony Hopkins was just having a blast with this kind of role too, because even some of the stuff that they give him later, where he's making certain smart-ass comments and stuff, he does it in a very earnest way that really doesn't come across as campy. It still comes across as something I would expect from his character, and it's in a way, it's almost like the long-awaited sequel to Hannibal that I've always wanted to see in some aspects. So they both really work to their advantage. And then when it gets to also the climax, it goes into some stuff that I was like really on the edge, like, oh man, where is it? I kind of know where this is going, but I really want to see how this plays out, you know. And so if I had to get into any kind of little minor cons, we'll have to say that there is some questionable stuff about how Anthony Hopkins' character is kind of getting away with certain stuff. Because as the car is going along in different areas, you do kind of wonder if anybody's like really picking up on stuff. Especially, well, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but there's some stuff that involves where it's roaming the streets in some parts, and there's like a section that involves where people have like cameras and stuff, and then the fact that there's also like hardly any witnesses around and everything, it does really make me kind of question the longevity on how certain stuff are going around, and also the fact that there's also like you kind of question like if Skarsgård's character is reported like missing or anything like that. I did also kind of question that too at times, but for the most part, I still really had a really great time with this movie, and it's still everything that I really want to see out of it. And so with that, I'm going to give it a high compelling grade on the Film Freaks meter. So for those of you who have also seen Locked, let me know in the comments what you thought about it, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.